Welcome back to the Gear Shelf. This is an exciting video. I'm going to be reviewing the Blackmagic 6K Pro. This is my 3-month review. As you can see, I have the full rig here, obviously not the monitor on it, but this has been my workhorse of a camera. I've only owned this camera for 3 months now, and I kind of want to give my overall thoughts and opinions of this camera as a cinematographer's perspective. What I really like about this camera is the image quality. This is why people will spend thousands of dollars building out all the rigging around this camera, because the image quality speaks volumes. One of the reasons why the image quality of this camera is so good is because it has RAW video. It shoots B-RAW specifically. B-RAW allows me to be able to change exposure, but mainly when I color grade the footage, it gives me a lot more range and latitude versus, a baked log file. You get a lot more flexibility than, let's say, shooting an F-log or in something else. Another thing to note is this camera drains battery pretty quickly, so obviously you have a giant V-mount on the back. I can use this V-mount for maybe 7 or 8 hours of filming, and I don't need to swap batteries because this is kind of like a mirrorless in that way. A few other things to note: I do love the menus of Blackmagic. I think they're really great. Now, this camera form factor is, I think, the weirdest part, and I think it kind of makes a lot of people turned off by the idea of this camera because it's this weird snout design. And I personally don't love the look of the snout. That snout is specifically for EF, and that's why it looks kind of weird. And it's also really big. You get this screen that can tilt and stuff and is 1000 nits display, and you also get the built-in NDs, which is awesome. But this camera is such a weird form factor to build that it makes any other camera seem easy to kind of rig out. It always looks weird and kind of bad just because it's this giant mirrorless SLR with the actual, like there's just this giant SLR, but also in a cinema camera with fans on the top, and it's just this weird monstrosity. So you have to, put your SSD and everything on the side. So I think in terms of rigging, it's actually not that hard to rig. It just makes it really big. And then if you're trying to put it on a gimbal, no camera is designed to be this big and weird. Even like a Komodo is smaller than this in terms of the width of it. But that being said, I chose this camera for a variety of reasons. To get about $3,000 for an overall kit that is going to last me a long time for a lot of these advertisements, music videos, short films, and all other commercial and passion work that I make on the side, this camera has been amazing. I take this on almost every shoot I'm a part of, and I always get an image that I'm proud of. I think the most important thing when it comes to picking a camera out is actually if you think you can make a good image with it. So if you grew up on a Sony and an FX3 is perfect for you, that's where you should move to. And when you try different cameras out, if it's difficult and hard, like for example, in my opinion, Sonys are harder to get an image look than a Blackmagic. I feel like I can make the Blackmagic image look pretty good within 10 minutes in DaVinci, whereas on a Sony I take about 30. And so it's all about personal preference and how the camera helps you create the image to make the best possible look. I like that you can, in theory, do everything on this camera. This camera has built-in timecode, it has built-in XLRs, it has built-in HDMI, it has everything you want to do in one camera. So if I don't have a sound guy, I just plug in my Rhodes, or I can plug in a microphone directly to the XLR port. If I want to throw a monitor anywhere, I can do that. If I want to record to an SSD, I can do that. If I want to plug directly into my Mac and stream, I can do that. I think this camera really creates exceptional images, and it's really easy for me to get images with this camera. I think the main gripes with this camera is the size and riggability of it and no autofocus. And so you kind of get this weird, shaky, out of focus, bad looking footage. But if you take the time to learn how to use this camera and you learn the fundamentals, I promise you this camera can do you volumes. Another thing that's interesting about the Pocket 6K Pro is it has dual base native ISO, which is, I believe the ISO is at 800 and 3200. I have noticed it to be quite noisy actually, and so I'm still in the process of figuring out how to deal with noise. I don't find that to be too much of an issue. I'm always lighting when I use this camera. If I don't, I'll be using the Fuji. So it's been kind of not an issue in my opinion, but it is kind of difficult that way. Another hardship with having a camera like this is the file size. Just like a Red or an RE, it eats through hard drives like nothing else. I mean, I shoot most of my stuff in 12:1, which isn't kosher. People really prefer to be in 8:1 at the bare lowest. You're gonna cut through hard drives. My solution to this has just been I delete the projects when I'm done with it, and if not, I'll just keep the timeline. That's been good for my reel, so I know I can pull to the shots that I want, and then yeah, it's not ideal, but you don't want to be spending thousands of dollars on hard drives, in my opinion, unless the shoot costs that much, and then it totally makes sense to pay that much money for the media to store it on. The camera is kind of heavy, but not terrible. I would say it's about, 10 pounds when I have it rigged out. But you can also use just the MPFs and shoot it that way. Even though I have the capability to, I've actually never used the MPFs on here. I just basically use it as a hot swap feature. So I can have the MPF in, and then when I'm swapping out V-mounts, it doesn't turn off, which is nice. I just don't think it's worth using this camera if you don't feel like rigging it out, because rigging it out gets you all the advantages of all the different parts, the customization, and you can address the main issues of power and storage that way. So traveling with this camera, I mean, I keep saying I will. I don't really think I ever will with this thing because it's just so big and so clunky. I've used this camera for 3 months, and so far I have gotten many images that I am more proud of out of this camera. Returning back to the homeland of Blackmagic has been awesome. A few of my favorite features of this camera is you can load your own LUTs on the camera, customize them that way. You can create your own frame guides. You can create your own presets of the camera. So you can have like a slow motion, a fast motion, a wedding. You can have all these presets that you can choose between, and it will change what the buttons do on the camera. A lot of powerful features for those power users out there. And I just, quite frankly, it's the image that gets me the Blackmagic every time. I mean, it costs a fortune, there's hard drives, there's a lot of hidden costs, there's a lot of pieces, it kind of looks ugly sometimes. But in the end, when people see the image of the Blackmagic, I have never gotten more looks of, wow, that's a really great camera, or wow, you really know how to use that, compared to like a Fuji or a Sony or a Canon. All those other mirrorless cameras are awesome when you need size as your concern, and they really do put out a great image. I have no hate with those cameras, and honestly, this camera has made me learn how important it is to have mirrorless cameras, because like doing a talking head like this is like a heavy beast that I have to get right, and I have to manually focus on my face and get a model in and all this stuff. And why not? You can just throw it in, put in autofocus, have auto white balance, who really cares? And it looks like a pretty good image. So I think the real dream is to upgrade this into a bigger cinema camera one day as like a Red Komodo or maybe an Ari eventually, and then always keep around a mirrorless for all these little, things that you need, where you need a B cam or you need a smaller camera to travel with. If you have any questions about this camera, let me know down below. This is like seriously my like child. I know everything about this camera and I love this camera. And whenever I get to shoot on it, I'm just having a great day. So if you have any questions, please let me know down below in the comments, and I will see you in the next review. Okay, we're done.